better strap yourself in. It's time for the Howie Carr Show.
I want to hear your words. Bill Clinton, sexual predator. I dare you. Say Bill Clinton, sexual predator.
Mr. Speaker,
disbarred by the Arkansas bar. Disbarred by the Arkansas bar. $850,000 penalty.
Excuse me, sir. We on the Kelly File have covered the Clinton matter as well. We've hosted Kathleen Willey. We've covered the examples of him being accused as well, but he's not on the ticket. And the polls also show that the American public is less interested in the deeds of Hillary Clinton's husband than they are in the deeds of the man who asks us to make him president, Donald Trump. We're going to have to leave it at that, and you can take your anger issues and spend some time working on them, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for being here.
And you too.
Live from an undisclosed location.
And 91% of the time, they're speaking negatively about Donald Trump. And it may explain why right now the confidence of the American people in the news media is so much even below Congress. I mean, the media has become about as popular as a whole gang of cockroaches in your kitchen these days.
Unchained and unstoppable.
A small, insecure money grubber. A man who will never be president of the United States.
Who's your captain? Howie Carr.
We have to get ready to form a government. And along those lines, we find many talented people who would like to serve in Donald Trump, Mike Pence administration, and we're really happy about that. We're not doing it because we're presumptuous. I think the way my friends across the aisle are doing it, but we're doing it because it's a very serious prospect to form a government in a very small time.
RUMP, SWABS, hacks, and moonbats beware. It's Howie Carr.
We'll talk about Newt, we'll talk about Megan, we'll talk about all of them as we go along here today. But I want to start out with Jonathan Gruber. Dr. Jonathan Gruber. Remember him? He's the wonderkind from Cambridge. Got a PhD, piled higher and deeper at about the age of 22 or 23. He's not really a physician or anything like that, but he has a PhD, and he's got that tenure at, I forget, it's MIT, I think, or Harvard. He went to Harvard and got a tenure at MIT or vice versa. Lives in Lexington here in suburban Boston. Has made millions upon millions as an advisor to all these states as they set up their Obamacare exchanges, all of which are now collapsing. And for a while, it looked like he was in deep trouble with the law because he couldn't prove all these bills he was submitting to various states across the country as he ruined their health care. That Vermont being the primary one that he ruined. He worked for Massachusetts. He worked for Maine. He worked for Wisconsin. He worked for Minnesota, all these states, made millions upon millions, and he couldn't back up a lot of the expenses that he claimed he had incurred. But, you know, he's a Democrat. He's a beautiful person. He's a moonbat. He's not a deplorable. He's not one of us. He's not irredeemable. He's not a bitter clinger. So he walked away with it. So now, here as Obamacare crashes and burns on the eve of the 2016 presidential election, he's been trotted out. I don't know who made the decision. I don't think it's a wise move to have him out there because he just reminds people of how he lied to them and then laughed and bragged about lying to them in these Ivy League academic settings, and then they put it on the internet, and the videos were discovered, and again, he had a photo finish with a posse. Basically.
You know, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever, but basically that was really, really critical to get anything to pass.
The stupidity of the American people. That's what he was relying on. Okay. Present company excluded, I assume. Dr. Gruber. But he's back on national TV this morning on CNN, and he's dropping more whoppers on us.
First of all, the 22% increase, let's remember who that applies to. That applies to a very small fraction of people who have to buy insurance without the subsidies that are available. 85% of people buying insurance on these exchanges get subsidies. And for those people, this premium increase doesn't affect them. Now, for those remaining people, that is a problem. and that's something we need to address. But it's not a crisis. It doesn't mean the system's collapsing.
If your premium, you live in Arizona, it goes from $169 a month to $425 a month, I would say it's a crisis. What is it? This is the old, there's an old joke, a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose your job. This is another one of those cases. There are all these millions of, and these people were minding their own business. Nobody went out and asked for this. And they did it, and they screwed up these insurance plans, and now they're just saying it's not a big deal. You know who doesn't get the deductible? Here's what he's not saying. The only people who are affected by this are people who work for a living, taxpayers, American citizens. This is not going to affect illegal aliens. This is not going to affect anybody with an Obama phone. This is not going to affect anybody who is planning to vote for Hillary Clinton. This affects people who are trying to make their own way in life without asking for a handout from anybody. These are people who aren't claiming to be Native Americans so they can get a job at Harvard University Law School, okay? So what the hell does Jonathan Gruber care about any of this stuff? If you're a healthy 27-year-old living in Massachusetts, do you know how much money you have to make to be affected by these rate increases? You're probably thinking that you have to be making $70,000 or even $50,000 to be affected. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. How do I know this? Because Steve, my producer, is one of those people. He knows this because he's been looking around. Because I am a small enough employer, I don't have to worry about this. If I had to worry about this, guess what? If I had to pay for the insurance, he would be cut from 40 hours a week to 29 and a half hours a week, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But right now, I'm under the threshold. I'm adding people, but I haven't added enough to be affected by it yet. I want to keep my head down.
Well, if you cut my pay to like $30,000 a year, then I might qualify for subsidies.
There you go. There we can solve it that way too. And by the way, some of these subsidies, they're not really subsidies. They're putting you in Medicaid, which is a welfare program. Okay? Can we make that clear? Do people not understand that? It's a welfare program. We had the doctor on a couple of nights ago, and he said most doctors now can't. It's not that they don't want to take people on Medicaid. They can't afford to take people on Medicaid. It's not just pro bono or charity. It costs them money to take people who are on Medicaid. So guess what? If you can't get a doctor, you know where you're going to go? You're going to go to the emergency room. And that was one of the promises of Obamacare, that there were going to be fewer illegal aliens and layabouts going to the emergency room. But has anything changed? No, it has not changed in the least. So if you are a single, non-smoker, 27-year-old living in Massachusetts making $32,000 a year, you don't get any subsidy whatsoever. If you're working and making just $32,000 a year, you're going to get slammed by rate increases. And Jonathan Gruber says that's okay. But you know why Jonathan Gruber doesn't care? Because for the same reason that they're talking about pushing through in Massachusetts a millionaire tax on the 2018 election. Don't worry, we're only going to increase income taxes on people making $1 million a year. Oh, okay. How much does that really work out to? $1 million a year, $32,000 a year. That's right. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to absolutely be the same thing. That's the way it always is. Whatever they make the level, the supply is going to fail. So they have to drop it down. They keep dropping it down. They keep dropping it down. The supply continues to fail, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And you know what we have? It's called a death spiral. That's what Obamacare is in right now, a death spiral.
Look, once again, there's no sense in which this has to be fixed. The law's working as designed. As
designed. The law is working as designed. You know what that means? That means Jonathan Gruber is still covered by MIT or Harvard. Obama is still covered, being the president of the United States. Congress, all the Democrats in Congress are covered because they exempted themselves. So the law is working as designed. It only affects people like you and me and Steve. That's what it means. It's designed. So, the other interpretation of that is that he designed Obamacare to destroy the system and push us over the cliff into a single-payer government-run healthcare plan. There can only be one of those two options. There is no third option. All right? Cut number 3.
It could work better. And I think probably the most important thing experts would agree on is that we need a larger mandate penalty. We have individuals who are essentially free riding on the system. They're essentially waiting until they get sick and then getting health insurance. The whole idea of this plan, which was pioneered in Massachusetts, was that the individual mandate penalty would bring those people into the system and have them participate. The penalty right now is probably too low, and that's something I think ideally we would fix.
So now they're worried about free riders. The borders are open and tens of thousands of free riders are crossing the border every day, and we're going to welcome them because, you know, they're owed it by the American people to live for free forever, as long as they want. Don't bother to learn English. Bring in your infectious diseases, your criminal gangs, your Sharia law. We'll welcome you all. But if you're in the country and you used to have a plan that you were paying for, you're a free rider now. And by the way, aren't 5 states voting in a couple of weeks on medical marijuana, legalizing marijuana? What are one of the reasons why that we're voting to legalize marijuana purportedly? Because the laws are too onerous, right? We're punishing people for others. So we have to do away with all the laws punishing people for smoking pot. But at the same time, Jonathan Gruber wants to impose penalties on people who cannot afford to buy this crappy health insurance. They used to have health insurance that they could afford and that the deductibles were not out of their reach. The copays were not out of their reach. The government took away their health care plans, now is forcing them to buy health care plans that they can't afford. And so they won't buy them because they can't afford them. So what are we going to do? We're going to punish them further. The beatings will continue until morale improves. And of course, it's not a tax that we're doing. It's the shared responsibility fee. It is the shared responsibility fee. Next one.
We could do things like the stronger mandate is one. We could do things like increasing the pressure on states to expand their Medicaid programs, a horrible act of political malpractice where states have left millions of people, of their lowest income citizens, uncovered. We could do things like that. But a lot of that would involve congressional participation. It's hard to know what you can do just on your own as a new administration.
So this is like, here, would you like this glass of poison? No, I don't think I want some poison. Well, if you won't drink the poison, you're guilty of malpractice. We told you that the poison is good for you and you wouldn't drink it. And so you refused to do it? Well, we're going to make you tie him down to the gurney and we're going to force it down his throat.
Not to mention the Supreme Court ruled that the state can't force, or the government, the feds can't force us to drink the poison.
Yeah, I guess you better get some more blackmail material on John Roberts if you want to change that vote in the Supreme Court. God, I just don't understand it. You know, if John Kasich in Ohio has basically blown up the state budget. He's wrecked the Buckeye State for the foreseeable future in terms of state expenditures and state budgets by expanding Medicaid. And, Paul LePage in Maine doesn't want to do that. I mean, this is what you call federalism, you know? The states are the laboratories of democracy. I mean, that's not just a cliche. It's true. It's true. And Jonathan Gruber, what are his credentials? He almost wrecked the state of Vermont.
But he's a doctor, Howie.
He's a doctor.
If you're not licensed to cut me open and perform surgery, I don't consider you a doctor.
If you can't give me some pills that are going, if I can't nickname you Dr. Feelgood, in my opinion, you are not a doctor. That's what I say. Dr. Gruber is not Dr. Feelgood. This half hour of the Howie Carr Show is powered by Weston Shooters Club, New England's newest and finest private shooting club where country club meets gun club. Conveniently located in Weston, Mass. at the junctions of routes 128 and 20. Visit WestonShootersClub.com. I'm Howie Carr.
That's right, Howie Carr.